Hey guys, my name is Sam Roscoe and I'm the Assistant Chief Flight Instructor here at vHorizon Flight Center. Today we're going to be talking about how airplanes turn. There are many misconceptions in aviation. For instance, there are pilots who think prop wash is a highly specialized detergent. And a select few think that when an instructor says, "Okay, taxi," that they should call a cab. Let's examine what causes an airplane to turn, and then look at how you can perform this maneuver. The lightness of lift. Airplane A in this picture shows a view of an airplane in straight and level flight. This picture shows how an airplane turns. Banking the airplane causes the lift force to tilt, which pulls the airplane in the direction of the bank. Technically, it's the horizontal component of the lift force that makes the airplane turn. From this vantage point, lift acts vertically, pulling upward on the airplane and keeping it suspended in flight. Of course, if lift can pull upward, it can also pull a little to the left or right. When it does this, the airplane turns. Airplane B in this picture shows the total lift force on a banked airplane. Part of the lift force pulls the airplane up, the vertical component of lift, and part pulls the airplane in the direction of the turn, the horizontal component of lift. You can use your imagination and visualize two separate and smaller forces, making up the total lifting force. The arrows represent the forces of lift. Always remember that it's horizontal component that causes an airplane to turn. It pulls the airplane in an arc. Therefore, the larger the angle of bank, the greater the horizontal component, and the quicker the airplane can turn. Turns, maneuvers, you can bank on. Now that you know what makes an airplane turn, let me ask you an important question. The question is, how do we tilt lift so as to make the airplane turn? The answer is with the ailerons. If you said, "with the wheel," I promise not to have a heart attack. In fact, turning the wheel or deflecting the joystick, that is, banking the airplane using ailerons, is exactly how we tilt the total lifting force and start a turn. To turn, deflect the joystick. When I say deflect, I mean to move it slowly to the right or left, in the desired direction of the turn, and roll the airplane until reaching the desired bank angle. Then return the joystick to its neutral, center position, and the airplane usually remains established at this bank angle. If the airplane drifts from the desired bank, give the joystick a nudge or two to remain at the bank angle. Let me roll myself up in the sheet and place Socrates again by asking, from the inside of the cockpit, how can you tell how steeply you're banking? After all, you can't have another pilot follow you around just to tell you what your bank is. Here's a better way. This picture shows the attitude indicator that we learned about earlier. At the top of the attitude indicator, immediately to the right and left of center, there are white bank marks. Each mark indicates 10 degrees of bank up to 30 degrees. Beyond the 30-degree mark are the 60-degree and 90-degree bank marks. To establish a 30-degree bank term, roll the airplane until a white bank mark, the third one from the top, rests over the little orange triangle. Not too tough, is it? But what if you want to bank at 15 or 45 degrees? Here's how it's done. This picture shows two white diagonal lines angled downward from the middle of the attitude indicator. These are bank lines from 15 and 45 degrees of bank, respectively. If you roll the airplane to the right until the attitude indicator's miniature airplane, the one with little orange wings, is parallel to the first diagonal line, as shown in this picture by B, then you're in a 15-degree bank. A 45-degree bank is accomplished by gently rolling the airplane until the miniature airplane's wings are parallel to the second diagonal line, compensating for gravity and drag. Now there's one more thing you need to understand before you're ready to proceed to the interactive lesson on turns. In aviation, it's important to remember that you never get something for nothing. This is especially true when making turns. Tilting the total lift force while in a turn means lift is available to act vertically against the airplane's weight. Refer back to airplane B in the first picture that we showed. The airplane responds by moving in the direction of the momentarily large force, downward in the direction of the weight. We compensate for this by increasing our lift slightly whenever we enter a turn. This is done by applying a little back pressure on the joystick. That's back pressure on the joystick, not pressure you generate on your back by digging your heels into the airplane's carpet. Later on, you'll understand that back pressure increases the wing's angle of attack, thereby increasing the wing's lift slightly. Unfortunately, this increase in angle of attack also increases the drag, which slows the airplane down. In a shallow bank turn, somewhere around 30 degrees or less, the decrease in speed isn't a concern. Steeper turns, 45 degrees or more, may require the addition of power to prevent the airspeed from decreasing too much. Let's take a look at the attitude indicator again and see how we can use it to help us calibrate the amount of back pressure we should use when entering a turn. Observe the position of the attitude indicator's miniature airplane, especially the orange ball between the wings. In straight and level flight, the miniature airplane and the orange ball rest almost directly over the artificial horizon line, as shown in this picture. This picture shows how the mini airplane rests almost on horizon bar in straight and level flight. In a bank, however, it's hard to identify the airplane's pitch on the attitude indicator, since the miniature airplane is no longer aligned with the artificial horizon line. Therefore, use the position of the orange ball in relation to the artificial horizon line as a pitch reference in a turn. In order to hold an attitude in a 15-degree and 30-degree bank turn, you must slightly increase the airplane's pitch. This figure gives you a basic idea of how much this pitch must increase. The point you want to remember is that steeper turns require an increase in pitch to maintain altitude. When rolling out on a turn back into straight flight, you must release that back pressure, thus reducing the pitch that is required for level flight. You'll learn more about why we must increase the pitch in a turn in the upcoming section on slow flight. For now, when rolling into or out of a turn, make whatever pitch-up adjustments is necessary to maintain altitude. In steeper turns, be prepared to pull back a little more on the joystick to keep the VSI's needle reading 0 and the altimeter's bug, the 100-foot hand, steady. Use the orange ball's position relative to the artificial horizon line to determine the airplane's pitch while banked, and remember to lower the pitch while returning to straight and level flight. Using the rudder. The rudder is the most movable surface located on the rear of the airplane. Its purpose is to keep the airplane's nose pointed in the direction of the turn, not to turn the airplane. Remember, airplanes turn by banking. The rudder simply corrects for the forces that want to twist the airplane in a direction other than the direction it wants to turn. Adverse yaw. Adverse yaw is the reason airplanes are equipped with rudders. When banking to the left, the aileron on the left wing's lower, causing that wing to lift up. While the lowered aileron increases the lift on the left wing, it also causes a slight increase in drag. Mother Nature always accompanies lift with a little drag. In a right turn, the aileron on the left wing goes down to lift that wing. The wing rises, but the slight increase in drag pulls the left wing aft a little. This has the effect of pulling, or yawing the airplane's nose adversely to the left as the airplane banks to the right. Obviously, if you're banked to the right, you want the nose to point in the same direction you're banking, don't you? This is where rudder comes in handy, although we use our feet to push on them. By keeping the ball and the inclinometer centered, you've properly correcting for adverse yaw. In this condition, the airplane is being flown with the proper coordination. Remember, adverse yaw affects the airplane as it rolls into or out of a bank. Therefore, more rudder pressure is needed when rolling into or out of a bank. Once you are established in a turn, you often can neutralize the rudder, and the nose should remain pointed in the direction you're headed. Flight Simulator comes with an auto rudder feature that keeps the nose pointed in the proper direction when making a turn. Therefore, if you don't have rudder pedals, the simulated airplane will always fly coordinated. In other words, an appropriate amount of rudder will always accompany an aileron. Of course, real airplanes don't have the auto rudder feature. Therefore, if you decide to take flight training in an actual airplane, you'll learn all about the rudder and how to use it and to use those pedals. Of course, without rudder pedal hardware or a rudder joystick, you'll most likely operate the airplane using the auto rudder feature. It simply makes no sense to deactivate this feature of Flight Simulator and let the airplane wobble all over the sky. Let's suppose you've opened your birthday present and found a set of rudder hardware for your Flight Simulator. You lucky person. Or you might just have a joystick with the rudder function built in. Try twisting it. It won't be long after you hook it up that you stop and ask yourself, hey, when do I use the rudder? One answer is, anytime you use the ailerons, such as when you're making a turn. Think of a rudder as a vertical aileron located on the tail of the airplane. A right or left deflection of the rudder foot pedals changes the angle of the vertical stabilizer, makes relative to the wind, causing the airplane to yaw about its vertical axes. This yawing motion keeps the airplane's nose pointed in the direction of the turn.